Hey, we're back with another episode of Dude, What's the Bid? It's Thursday morning here live on LinkedIn, 10 a.m. bright and early in the central time zone. My name is Kevin Hill, and I am with Brush Pass Research, your co-host, along with Casey Larkin over at Fairlanes. Casey, how are you doing today?
Doing well, Kev. It's a lovely Thursday here around these parts. Excited for today's show. Glad to be here and got a pretty cool guest coming on today.
We do. We have a very special guest here that we'll have on in a couple of minutes. It's Dr. Mark Manera. He's a founder of OffShift, and it's all about health for the drivers. And it's something that freight broker, whether you're a carrier or freight broker, something you need to pay attention to. And it's got a great product and service that he's building out. We'll learn all about that. But before we jump into that, let's talk about rates a little bit.
Let's do it.
What do you got?
One moment here. So last week we saw rate per mile for all equipment types jump over the volume weighted average 235 we've been looking at. Wanted to zoom in a little bit and see if rates are maintaining. I'd seen one of our old buddies, Zach Strickland, talking and mentioning that rates had kind of sustained past the historical trough you may see after the 4th of July. So wanted to break it out, for the different trailer sectors, and great to see a strong start to the week for freight here that was picked on Monday, right? For a number of different sectors. We're looking, 247 for dry van, 313 on average for reefer. I posted this last night, and there's a trucker that reached out, said he was getting 352 per mile on his current reefer load. So had a conversation as well with George Abernathy yesterday, who's still pretty plugged into Emerge, and might be getting close to the point where we can kind of officially declare this thing as a bull market. Covenant, strong earnings, a couple of cool stories indicative of the market strengthening a little bit. But as we look back at July as a whole, so if I can pull that back up, we're down to 245 from 249. A little bit of reversion there, but nothing to worry about too much. Still holding nice and strong above the 235.
Yeah, I've been hearing percolations of positivity from some of my friends out there, which is always a good sign, right? A year ago, everyone thought the world was ending. And it didn't really improve much, but you have a little bit of optimism out there, which is great. You have, I guess, record West Coast imports coming in. You have
exactly
a kind of an inflection point, maybe on interest rates, where interest rates might be on a downturn in a very short order. At least the start of the downturn. Yeah. We've been kind of holding steady for a while. We might be on the downward part of the interest rate cycle, which is always good for everybody. So there's some things out there to put a positive spin.
Absolutely.
Cool.
Good thing for truckers, that's for sure.
It is. It is. And we're 27 months into this kind of freight depression or recession, and everybody's been getting hit on all sides, but people are weathering the storm pretty well. I have a chart here that I want to show. If I can figure out how, I've never shared my screen on here, so I'm not really sure. How do I go about doing that?
Sharing your screen.
Oh, right here, down here. Yeah. Present. I suppose, right?
Sounds about right.
Yeah. Share my screen. Maybe. Hey, if you want to go to brushpassresearch.blog.
Hold on. Try to share one more time, and if this doesn't work, I'll pull that up in the meantime.
All right.
Well,
let's see. Share screen. Let's see here. Here we go.
Yeah.
I think I got it here. I'm going to share. I think so. Can you see my screen?
Yep.
Right.
Oh, is this the credit report that I saw yesterday?
Yeah, this is the credit report. So, credit profiles for the largest freight brokerages, right? And that encapsulates about 1,650 of those. And you see the color coding here, and I hopefully it's self-explanatory, but green is good, yellow is medium, everyday, average, and then red is some caution in there on credit risk when it comes to the brokerages. But what you find is about 10% or high risk or higher risk. I won't say high risk, higher risk bucket. And it breaks down pretty evenly between the yellow and the green. And yeah, and it goes, some of that's financial risk, right? Some of that's late payments,
Right.
which sometimes, you're a bank as a brokerage, right? So if you have customers with extended terms, sometimes you get backed up with your cash flow situation. Sometimes, you find this in larger organizations too. They're just low payers, kind of like large shippers, slow payers, large brokerages to their vendors, not necessarily the carriers, right? Because you got to be quick. Both other vendors, it's kind of a slow pay or extended terms. Because what you find is like $100 million plus. If I wrote down here, the microcap's pretty good. They have one of the lowest, about 6% in the red. As compared to, let me get up here to large cap, and you got about 30% of the large cap brokerages in the red, and that's just the lower third of credit scores.
Interesting.
And yeah, it is interesting, right? But you have a huge mismatch of cash flow sometimes with that. So I don't think that they are, certainly I wouldn't read in, threat of default being that high for the at-risk categories. I think the worst at-risk category default rates are about 12%. And that's throughout all industries, not just freight brokerage. But it is interesting stats, and it's something I'll post out on LinkedIn. Maybe while we're on the show today, maybe right after it. But I just got this up and running, and it's a new kind of a data point that we're putting into the brush pass research data, the prospecting and sales data that freight tech companies use to sell to freight brokerages.
Very cool.
Yeah.
It's kind of mind-blowing to me. I would think that the bigger broker would have more liquidity than the smaller broker. Is that a risk for the large broker moving forward? How is it possible they're not able to pay bills as quickly as the small guys?
I don't know. Maybe they use some of their leverage to slow pay. I'm trying to figure it out myself. I think if you're a micro, you're doing $5-6 million, you better have stellar credit, right? That's when you need stellar credit, because you're living kind of on working capital, right? Where if you're a larger brokerage, you kind of have more flexibility.
Right.
But I haven't really come up with a really good explanation myself to explain that. So if you're out there listening or watching and you have an explanation, throw it up here in the comments, because I'm open to hearing different thoughts and ideas.
Yeah, seriously.
And that brings us to a pretty good. Yeah, go ahead. Sorry.
Just saying, please do help us. It's a bit of a conundrum for you and I to figure out.
I know, right? A little bit above our pay grade sometimes.
Absolutely.
Yeah, but we're talking about credit health. Let's talk about driver health with Dr. Mark Manera coming on here. We're going to talk about off shift and what he's been up to. I see these squat challenges all the time on LinkedIn. I see he's doing some programs with Dooner, which is always interesting. So we'll figure out what they're doing on what the truck as well.
Did you see
But
Dooner's post yesterday? Trying to get some airport food. Saw him with the saddest couple strips of grilled chicken on a napkin at the airport yesterday. You're not working him too hard, are you?
You thought that chicken looked gross? I thought that chicken looked great. I thought that was some good looking smoked chicken out of the fine establishment of barbecue airport food, right? I mean, you come to St. Louis and they don't even serve real chicken. It's just like rubber, and so I think he took. No, I'm just kidding. But
was it the St. Louis airport?
No, he was at. I think he was out of Texas, some Texas airport, But yeah, no, I'm all about the lean protein. Get it in anywhere you're at. If you're at the airport, a truck stop, or cooking it at home.
That's awesome. Lean protein. That's what it's all about, right?
It's all about. No, but thank you guys for having me on. Excited to talk.
Yeah, it's great having you on, Mark. It really is. So off shift. Let's talk about that. Let's introduce yourself and kind of your background and how you got into transportation trucking and what you're up to right now.
Yeah. So quick story is 4 years ago, didn't know a single soul in the trucking industry. I knew what a semi truck was, but that was about as deep into the supply chain as I got. I have a doctorate degree in physical therapy. And so I was working in a PT clinic here in St. Louis, and walked in a bunch of truck drivers. And it was just my first time getting to know some drivers, so the trucking industry as a whole, and also first time seeing what 20, 30 years behind the wheel can do to someone's health. And it just threw me down this rabbit hole of the industry, and I haven't looked back since. And so started Off Shift last year. We're a digital health company focused on helping drivers live a healthier, happier life. So we work as an employee benefit with trucking companies and some other industrial companies as a whole, really focused on helping blue collar industrial workers get engaged with their health and make changes on the ground with their lifestyle, and also help them navigate the healthcare system.
It's awesome. It's awesome. And it was based on your previous work in physical therapy and rehab with blue collar workers, specifically trucking, right?
Correct. Exactly. And the clinic that I was working at, it was rural St. Louis, South St. Louis. So we had, it was a big mine town. So we had some people who worked in the mine. We had warehouse construction workers, but I really just clicked with a bunch of truck drivers that walked in. And so that was kind of my entry point into the supply chain. And, from an entrepreneurial standpoint, I consider myself very mission driven. And I felt as though in my life, I was kind of just floating around trying to figure out what mission I can go jump all in, and also, scratch that entrepreneurial itch as well. And it just fell into my lap, and I just took advantage of it.
Very good. Very good. So off shift. Let's talk a little bit more about that and what you're doing right now. You've been working on this for about a year and a half now, 2 years.
Yeah, year and a half. Yeah. Exactly. Yeah.
Time flies, doesn't it?
Yeah, it does. It does. So really the goal of Off Shift is when you look at let's just talk about a company as a whole. Let's say an industrial company who has assets, and they have truck drivers that are, under their authority. And it may be from a healthcare perspective, maybe from a work comp standpoint, and even from a turnover standpoint, there's a lot of risk that's associated from an organization having a wide base of drivers under their umbrella. And, health is a big area that is often swept under the rug in general from a risk mitigation standpoint, especially in the industry where, everyone talks about safety behind the wheel, safety of the equipment, but a lot of
Mhm.
the times the people don't talk about, the health and safety of the person who's operating the equipment, and making sure that, both mentally and physically they're showing up as prepared as possible. And also, from companies that are large enough to be self-insured on the health insurance side of things, or, hold a lot of risk on work comp, doing things to get ahead of high cost claims that are very expensive, especially as that add up when you have a demographic of people who have the highest rates of obesity and diabetes among any other occupation, and die 16 years earlier than the average American just because of the lifestyle. And so
Right.
for us, the issue that we deal with
16
is that,
years. Did you hear that, Casey? 16
yeah,
years.
Yes, I did.
it's nuts. It's nuts. It's crazy to me that anyone's
61.
career. Yeah, exactly. 61 years old. It's crazy to me that anyone's career defines their health like that. And it's even crazier to me that we have an industry that all of these people literally are the backbone of our whole society. And oftentimes it's just swept under the rug, and it's talked about maybe during January 1st and trucker, driver appreciation week, but no one else wants to talk about it throughout the rest of the year. Right. And what we're
Right.
seeing now is that as the new generation of, a little bit more savvy risk mitigation strategies are coming into enterprise trucking companies and enterprise industrial companies, is people are starting to think about, okay, how can we use the health of our employees or improve the health of our employees as a part of our risk mitigation strategy. And so what we're seeing is that all of the health benefits that these companies have available to offer to their employees are all industry agnostic, which really means, they're built for someone who works in a cubicle and handed to a driver, even someone in the shop maintenance or dock or warehouse worker, as an afterthought. And they don't really fit into their lifestyle. They don't understand the culture of the industry, and they also don't speak the language, which really creates this huge engagement problem where it's like, companies check the box, hey, we have a wellness program or we offer these benefits, but no one's using them. Like, they're collecting more
Mhm.
dust throughout the year than actual usage. And it's hard to get any value out of anything when no one's using it, right? And so for us, what we're trying to do is spearhead that engagement problem and really create the most engaging health benefit that a trucking company can offer, and get their drivers engaged with their health, which then creates healthier employees, which then drives ROI and health outcomes.
It's amazing. It makes me wonder. I mean, truck drivers, right? Life expectancy 61. You started working in rural Missouri with miners, other what seem to be like high risk occupations. How does truck driving as an occupation compare to the other occupations out there? I don't know that it's, would you call it risk, or what are the lowest life expectancies for occupations out there? Is truck driving the hardest job to do on your body?
Yeah, I don't have specific data on some of the other blue collar industrial industries as a whole. Trucking, just because of the nature of the lifestyle, especially for OTR drivers, I think it's just kind of a shining light of, it's a really difficult lifestyle. They're behind the wheel for 11 hours a day, maybe working up to 13, 14 hours. You get done, you're mentally drained, and the last thing you want to do is go for a run and eat a salad. Like, I go for an 8-hour road trip and I just want to veg out and watch Netflix after I get done. So it's like the mental bandwidth aspect is a huge issue. And then you add the fact that, you're in Dallas one day, St. Louis the next day. Casey, where are you at in the country?
Dallas.
Okay, Dallas. All right. Then
I'm from
Boston the next day. Okay,
yeah,
Baltimore the next day. And like, you're staying at these random truck stops in the middle of Iowa, and they don't have the healthiest options. A lot of the times people associate being physically active with finding a gym. Hopefully we're changing that, mindset as a whole. But there's a lot of things that stack up against drivers and, make it difficult for them to live a healthier life.
It is. I mean, because after about an hour of driving, I'm ready. I'm just dozing off. I'm dozing off. I'm just I can't do it. But to be behind the wheel, 10 hours a day, 6 days a week, 5, 6 days a week, especially on the long haul, over the road type of routes. is stressful. I mean, it's just stressful, and it's just not fun riding in a car, driving a car for that long. Coincidentally, Casey and I did a road trip from Chattanooga, Tennessee to Chicago one time in a effing blizzard, and that wasn't pleasant. I couldn't imagine doing that every single day of my life.
Was Kevin the one singing loud, or was it Casey? Or was it both of you? You guys are just singing out loud to each other, serenading each other. Regardless, I found so many drivers that just love it. Right. I think that it is a difficult lifestyle. I think there are certain aspects, but I think that there are some people that they would not want to do anything else, and they just love the freedom of being out on the road. But that doesn't make it easier for them from a health standpoint. And there's definitely barriers that make it difficult. And a lot of the times these opportunities that they have are, you go on the internet and Google how to be healthy, and it's really doesn't fit the lifestyle of a driver. It doesn't really understand some of the barriers that they face. And, some of the worst things is just like, I go on a road trip and, I'm like bored. So I'm just mindlessly eating. I'm just drinking, whatever is near me. And
Roy Rogers, if you're up north, like when I think about it, I eat so poorly when I'm driving. It's so easy because it seems there's no healthy options on the road. I imagine your average truck driver sees a Chick-fil-A 100 times more, or Roy Rogers or McDonald's 100 times more than I do sitting here working in my air-conditioned home office,
Well, it's tough. And the worst part is like the amount of soda, right? There's a lot of drivers who are drinking a ton of soda throughout the day. So they're just like drinking hundreds of calories, hundreds of grams of sugar. And then the worst thing is like you put the family-sized bag of Doritos in the passenger seat. You're just driving down the highway. It's like mile 10. All of a sudden you get to mile 65 and like your hand hits the bottom of the bag. You've got like cheese dust all over your fingers and you're like, oh shit, I just ate a whole family-sized bag of Doritos and while listening to this podcast. And so, it's like for us, it's how do we figure out like, how do we help them, create an environment in their truck that is setting them up for success versus having, 3 Twinkies and a Snickers bar with a big gulp of Dr. Pepper near them. Right.
And another thing, you drive just a couple, 3 hours, 4 hours, 5 hours, right? You get up to that 4 or 5 hour mark and you get out of just a car and your knees hurt, your back is stiff, the last thing you want to do, you're drowsy. Well, I'm drowsy, right? The last thing you want to do is get active.
Yeah, exactly. So, truck drivers in general, the trucking industry has 3 times higher rates of work comp and musculoskeletal injuries on the job than the average U.S. Employer. 50% of those injuries that include lost time, so a driver having to take time off of work, and which end up being really expensive claims for the company, are musculoskeletal related. So they pull their shoulder, their back's achy, and it just hurts, or they hurt their knee, something like that. And when you look at the research, and this comes from the physical therapy background, 1/3 of those can be prevented from just regular physical activity. And so for us, helping them move more, be more physically active, we're really cutting down musculoskeletal claims at trucking companies. We're cutting down the amount of work comp and OSHA reportables that they're doing, and helping that's big a part of our ROI as well.
Right. When you talk about ROI, right? I think it's good to understand that a lot of the larger trucking companies, right, have drivers or self-insured.
Yep.
In their health insurance. Can you explain that to our audience? How self-insurance works and kind of the risk and the risk mitigation that is a little bit different than, say, your white collar, your tech companies or office companies, and that group health insurance, and how that kind of differs and kind of what goes with that.
So there's a lot of nuance. There's a lot of nuance to it, but I'll give you the very high level of kindergarten version of it that
good.
gives you an easy understanding. And it's no different if you're a trucking company, a warehousing company, or a tech company. It's all based of the risk tolerance and the size of the group that you are dealing with. So basically, Kevin, Casey, and I start a business. We want to offer health insurance. We're a 3-man group, and we go to Blue Cross Blue Shield, and we pay them every month. And they deal with our premiums, all this other stuff, and then they basically, if we go to the doctor, we send the claim to Blue Cross Blue Shield, and they pay for it out of the pocket of money, and they spread the risk because they've got 1,000 different 3-man companies that then they pile together and can spread the risk of high cost claims across from. Our company grows. Say now we've got 500 employees, maybe 5,000 employees, and now all of a sudden we look under our umbrella of all our organization. We're like, okay, we have a pretty big group of people that we can spread the risk across in our organization. And we're paying a ton to Blue Cross Blue Shield or this other health insurance company. What if we cut out the middleman and we created the pot of money that we were going to pay Blue Cross Blue Shield and just kept it internally and self-insured? So if there was a claim, we would pay it out of that pot of money. Now, there's a lot of nuance. That was, again, the kindergarten version. And there's a lot of like this, there's a spectrum there. But basically what that means is they hold a lot of the risk for certain claims. And so they are very incentivized to be proactive and offer health benefits that reduce the likelihood of Kevin, Casey, or I, turning into an uncontrolled diabetic that ends up in the hospital for 2 weeks and turns into an $80,000 claim because I can't control my costs. And so for them, exactly. So that's that.
Foot amputated, right?
Yeah, exactly. Right. And so, there's a lot of things, especially as you go into like obesity related chronic conditions like heart disease, like diabetes, and some of these other conditions that can turn into really high cost healthcare claims and be just put a lot of expenses and risk on trucking companies specifically. And because of the difference of, a white collar company versus maybe a company that has a lot of industrial workers or more blue collar or truck drivers is, in general, the culture and just demographic is oftentimes maybe a little bit more, maybe a little bit less healthy. And then also from a health IQ standpoint of just understanding the healthcare system and taking advantage of it, maybe not as forward with that.
I know I've had a hard time navigating the healthcare system. I can't imagine how hard it must be when you add in the 1099, right, or your own taxes to the mix, right, figuring out where you're getting your own policies, things of that nature. But
that's a whole other beast. We'd have to have a whole other conversation. Let's not open that door, or we can, whatever. Yeah.
If you talk about rising costs, in the trucking world, right? Maintenance and fuel, and we talk a lot about that, but very few people throw in the health insurance side, and that we get into self-insurance, or even if you have a policy, the inflationary costs that you're seeing in healthcare is a margin killer.
It's crazy, right? I think in one of Atri's latest studies, I think they showed 6% of trucking companies' costs are benefits for their employees. Mm-hmm. And so, that's a big chunk that oftentimes, again, it's that 6%. And how often are you actually getting a value or ROI out of them when you're getting very little utilization or usage of them, right? And then you also come in on the trucking side of things, and there's the safety and work comp issues there where high cost claims start being very expensive. And, one musculoskeletal claim for a 100 truck company is $80,000. And that's a really big expense that they have to pay and have to handle, right? And so if we can get ahead of that, it could be life-saving for a company, and, maybe give a few hours of extra sleep to the CFO so he's not staring at the ceiling trying to figure this out, one day. And, then the other aspect is we've got an aging demographic as a whole, and trucking has high turnover rates that are getting unhealthier and older, and more and more people are failing DOT physicals. More and more drivers are having heart attacks, strokes, and major medical emergencies that are forcing them to leave the industry. And more people are just not being able to handle the lifestyle of a driver and having to retire earlier than they'd like because their health is not up to par.
Yep, that is all key ingredients to why it's trucking hard.
Yes, it is.
Running a truck. So let's talk about these squat challenges that we see on social media all over the place. Where did the idea? How long you been doing it? Where did the idea come from? How are you out executing it with your partners like Dooner?
Yeah, so this all started, I think, maybe 3 months ago. So Dooner and I have known each other probably maybe a little bit. We was one of the early people I met in the trucking industry as a whole. We've known each other, been on the show a couple of times throughout the year, and then his dad had a heart attack about 3 months ago. He's okay. He recovered. He's all good. But with anything, especially something close, a person close to you, it kind of is a wake up call, right? And for him, it was, I see myself going down this path. I've got kids that I want to be there for, and I want to enjoy life with, not, put a burden on them, as I get older. And also I'm in the trucking industry, and I see all of these people who are on a similar path because of the lifestyle and some of just the statistics in the industry. And I've got an amazing audience, and, I've got, I know Mark and what he's doing with Off Shift. Let's take a positive spin on this, and let's build the community around health, and let's do something fun to get people talking about it. And so I came up with the challenge of, like, how do we get a driver in every single state of the United States to take a video of them doing 10 air squats and post it online? And how do we gamify it by, like, checking off the states and seeing how quickly we can get all 50? And man, it just blew up. I started it in Missouri, and then we had a few people from there. And then all of a sudden, all these people who I've never met before are posting their video, and I'm like, this is awesome. So it literally less than 3 weeks, we got all 50 states. It got a lot of buzz. And now it's, how can we do more of these types of things to, keep the community growing? I just, like, I feel it when I'm at conferences, when I'm talking to people in the industry, when you see challenges like this industry wants to talk about health. People want to make health more of a priority. And I think it's taking a positive spin and building the community around it, and just someone taking the lead that just sometimes it takes to break that ceiling.
For sure. I mean, it's interesting. You mentioned earlier the 6% cost for employee programs for trucking companies. You're spending 6% of the money coming in the door, and the retention for your employees is not great, right? That doesn't even take into account turnover. And in this industry, I understand, right? Like, it's hard to keep a driver in a seat. So, that 6% really isn't doing too much for you right now if you're a trucking company. But, I don't know, hopefully with Off Shift and some squat challenges, maybe people could spend their 6% to improve the turnover ratio, hypothetically.
Yeah, well, and when I look at turnover, I break it down into two different categories. So there's, like, voluntary turnover, and then there's involuntary turnover. So involuntary turnover is like a driver, like, the company forces them to leave, or they fail their DOT physical. So when you look at the FMCSA's data on DOT physicals, about 5% of people fail there or don't get qualified. 42% of drivers out on the road right now have a temporary medical card. So they're, like, tiptoeing down the path of, oh shoot, maybe I might fail this, or I'm not fully medically qualified. I'm not getting a 2-year card to be able to go. And there's some nuance to that, where if you have diabetes or heart disease, you can't get a 2-year card. You automatically get a 1-year card, but that's a risk, right? And that's the involuntary side of things. But the voluntary side of things, outside of a company promising the world, and then someone shows up on day one and they're like, what the hell is this job? You did not mention any of this. You told me X, Y, and Z, and you're showing me A, B, C, right? But there was actually a really interesting survey from, I think it was Hire Right, and they looked at and they found that 20% of voluntary turnover, health was a part of the reason why that driver left the company. And also 34% of the voluntary turnover, one of the reasons why they left was better benefits somewhere else. And so for us, it's like, how can we help get drivers engaged? Because one of the best ways to keep people at your company is keeping them engaged with your benefits, with your company initiatives as a whole. How can we help them make sure that they pass their physical and no health related issues are causing them to leave your company? And then also, how can we create a health plan at your company that speaks to your drivers, is more driver specific, and you're offering, driver focused health programs that no other companies are offering, because they're just offering these industry agnostic generic programs that drivers just like scoff at and are like, I'm not going to do this. Right. And so those are the areas on the turnover side of things that I really think Offshift brings a strong strategic value to a trucking company.
It's all about adoption rates, right?
That's huge.
Adoption, if you don't use it, you lose it. Type of programs.
Right. Exactly. So we've actually, a lot of these companies will offer like benefits where they call it like a PEPM model, where it's a per employee per month price. Say it's $5 a month, but if they've got 1,000 employees, they got to spend $5 every single month for all 1,000 employees. And what ends up happening is the CEO or CFO is like looking at the horizon of all of their employees, and they're looking at this program and they're like, 70% of my employees are not even using this. Why am I paying every single month for all of this, instead of being pumped that 30% of them are getting healthier? And so we've actually flipped it around and really like, how do we align all the incentives to get the company, to get us, to get everyone involved, saying, how do we get as many people engaged with this program as possible? So we have a per enrolled employee per month pricing. We only charge the company per driver who signs up. And if they decide they don't want to do the program, or they stop using it after 90 days, we call them inactive, and we don't charge the company anymore. And it just sets it up for us to not, be excited about Casey, who's, doing 20 workouts this month and is feeling better, versus looking at Kevin and being like, why isn't Kevin doing this program? Why am I paying this every single month? And so that's one aspect to it. And then, on the employee marketing strategy, in my opinion, I think that is the biggest area that all health benefits, all company initiatives as a whole suck at. I think trucking companies, but it's outside of trucking. I bet if you go inside brokerages, you go inside warehousing, 3PL, like all of these things, they're really bad at employee marketing. And when you look at it from like a direct to consumer perspective, you open up Facebook and you're scrolling. It takes 20 touch points, 15 to 20 touch points for an ad to go by your screen for you to click on it and buy it. Why is it any different for any other benefit that you're offering, right? So many of these benefits we're going to talk about it on January 1st, and then we'll bring it up in an open enrollment in October. And it's like, well, no reason, no duh. You have like single digit engagement rates, because we live in a world where like everyone's squirrel, like we've got this, everyone's getting jumped around. Like it needs to be a continual conversation in front of your drivers, and it needs to be a part of your culture, a part of your safety culture, and it needs to be a continual conversation. And so that's what we've done, is like, how do we create an enrollment opportunity for Offshift at every single turn of the life cycle of a driver or employee at Kevin or Casey's trucking company? And so talking about it during orientation, talking about it during safety meetings, DOT before and after DOT physicals are a big part of it. We're starting to talk to some ELD providers to integrate it into the workflow of an ELD, so someone can sign up right there, when they're doing their pre-trip or starting their trip, or right after they park for the day. Like finding innovative, out of the box ways to get it in front of drivers and get them to say, oh yeah, let me take advantage of this. It's free. My company's paying for it. And that's where we've had a lot of success with it.
I mean, you mentioned earlier astonishing to me. 42% of drivers on the road are in physical condition that doesn't allow them to get insurance for more than a year.
Not insurance. Like their medical card, their DOT medical card, where they have to be qualified to get their CDL license. A driver has to go every 2 years, at least every 2 years, to get medically qualified for their commercial driver's license. And if they go and they're not healthy, or maybe they have a certain condition, then they can get handed a temporary card. So that might be a 1-year card, that might be a 6-month card, that might be a 3-month card. And then they have to figure that out and either go back on a really recurring basis and risk it every time, because if you got a 3-month card, there's a lot of things not going great in your life right now that you got to figure out. And basically the medical provider's like, hey, Casey, you got 3 months to turn this around, or, I'm not going to be able to give you a medical card, which means you can't drive a truck for a living anymore.
Right. It makes me think, if I were running a trucking company, I would like to know what percentage of my drivers are on temporary, DOT cards. Is it above or below 42%? And how much competitive advantage is it if, only 20% of my drivers are on temporary cards, and we're trending down, right? It seems to me like that could be an interesting thing for companies to start thinking about is, how do you compare to, and you mentioned those things as part of turnover that's not necessarily controllable, but I think with, a cool system like off shift, you can probably reduce the number of people that you have needing the temporary DOT card.
Yeah, I completely agree. Yeah, definitely. And, I think the other aspect is like the DOT medical card. The whole reason for that is from a safety perspective, right? And so if you're a safety manager, or you're, looking at just overall risk that you hold, and, you have nightmares every night about these things called nuclear verdicts, and just someone, bumping into one of your trucks and suing you for tens of millions of dollars. The reason why people get handed temporary cards or don't pass their medical card is because they are not safe enough to drive a commercial motor vehicle, right? And so if you look at how many temporary cards you have and you reduce that number, and you increase the number of people who have full medical cards, well, you're basically increasing the safety and decreasing overall risk, because the person behind the wheel is as healthy as they can be, to fully operate at the highest capacity.
I'm thinking the same thing.
Yeah.
The highest capacity. There is
that asset utilization that keeps coming back around.
It is. It is. It's something that is just so important. I think, as you said, it's just been overlooked for so long that no one's come up with the intentionality to do normal advertising to the end user, right? Because you're right. In advertising and in sales, you don't talk about it once, and then maybe talk about it again. Usually lecture people about it. The importance of it, you just have it there all the time, right? It's just a normal part of the communications or workflow. You become accustomed to it, and at a certain time, right? No, all it is, you're selling anything. You need to be in front of people, because at a certain time, someone's going to go through that decision making, or that there's going to be some kind of urgency, right? You're going to be dealing with something, right? You woke up and you were really stiff today, and your stomach's hurting you, because you ate a whole bag of Doritos, or whatever it may be, right? And you're like, man, not really rock bottom, but it's kind of like, I got to make a change.
Yes.
And if that's in front of you, boom, there it is. That's the call to action.
Exactly. Right. Or, we've actually had a lot of success. We call it like, how do we create internal company virality, and like, how do we spread word of mouth? And so like, we have a program called Next Meal on Us, where it's a refer a coworker program. And so, it's like, Casey's lost 20 pounds. All of a sudden he's like flexing in the mirror every time he goes to the bathroom. And, Kevin, gets done and he's like, man, Casey, you look great. Like, what are you doing here? And he's like, hey, you got to join off shifts. Like, our company's paying for it. It's free. If Casey refers Kevin, then we actually give you both $10 to buy your next meal on us. And so it's like different things like that to get people talking. You end up, with any initiative, with any piece of technology, like, there's that arc, right? And it's like the first part of it is like the innovators and early users. And it's like, how do we get those people at each company? How do we make them ambassadors? And then how do we get their friends to start joining? And we've been really successful. We typically get about 15% of the employees to sign up in the first 2 months. And then over 12 months, we'll get up to around 30 to 35%.
Reminds me, Kevin, I don't know if you remember this, and Mark, you mentioned earlier soda. When I started working at Freight Waves and met Kevin for the first time, I was drinking like 64-ounce Coca-Cola every morning.
Nice.
Probably one at lunch too. I got to a point I realized, damn, am I drinking like 1,000 calories?
Yes, you are.
Really makes you feel like shit. And then I stepped on the scale and weighed in at like 275 pounds.
Wow.
3 months after moving to the South and really enjoying all the fried food and things of that nature. And we started what we called the Freight Waves Fat F's weight loss competition. At Freight Waves, we had a Google sheet that was shared across the organization, and we had weigh-ins, once a week. And I think it was a 3-month competition. Got pretty heated. I think Johnny Bowes, our chief badass officer at the time, took the crown, beat out our controller, Andrew Mayfield, who all-time guy. We used to have a blast throwing. He's actually this Nerf football in the parking lot outside the old chicken plant. But I went from 275, and that kind of started me on a healthy lifestyle trend that I got from work. I got down to like 185 pounds at one point in time, and I don't know, maybe down to a soda a year at this point. So I don't know.
I do remember that. I remember that the pandemic started, and it was months before we used to work at the same office. Then it was months before I saw you again. Transformed.
And I don't want to villainize like soda. I don't want to villainize any type of food. It's like it's this balancing act, right? And it's like figuring out that balancing act and figuring out how to fit it into your life. And I think that's amazing. And a lot of times I hear people who like start switching out, not drinking as much soda, and all of a sudden, I don't really like the fizziness, or I don't really even like the taste of it anymore. I found this other 0-calorie beverage that tastes better, or, I have a lot of people who have a lot of success just switching to Diet Coke, right? And great, that's a much better option than just Coke on its own. If you want to go with a water, I'd probably say it's a little bit healthier than the Diet Coke, but still, it's like it's a spectrum, right? And it's steps you got to take, and I think that's amazing, Casey.
Yeah, I mean, I'm glad it happened.
Yeah.
What do you recommend on fizzy drinks? What's the best fizzy drink out there if you just crave carbonation?
Oh, okay. Well, here it is. I'm not a big sparkling water guy. I don't know. I just can't do it. But I will say that there are Walmart has these sparkling waters that are sweetened with I don't know if it's what they're sweetened with, some artificial sweetener, and they've got a cherry limeade one that's really good. I'm a sucker for a diet AMW root beer or a diet Dr. Pepper cherry. I'm all about that, and those are kind of my 3 go-to. And the last one. Yeah, the one last one I got to add here is the one last one is Walmart also has this like liter of sparkling water that's sweetened that they've got a blue raspberry one. And if you remember like going to the movies and getting an icy, like a blue raspberry icy drink, this thing tastes exactly like it. This literally like exactly like it, but it's 0 calories and it's not frozen. But that's I could literally drink that as a dessert some nights. So those are my go-to. Yeah, Kevin, what you got?
Oh no, I was just what did I have? Oh, on exercises, right? So basically the lowest hanging fruit. What has the best for the minimal effort, right? For the minimal, what has the best returns? That ROI on time and what you do, something that certainly to get you started.
Yeah. So
if you can only do one thing, this is what you need to do.
oh gosh. Well, look, I would actually say that so many people look at cardio exercise and think of it like associated with weight loss. And it's like when you look at the data, it really doesn't burn that many calories. Like you go for a run for an hour and like then you take a bite of a Snickers and they basically like they just kind of like I would think of like cardio exercise healthy for the muscles around your heart and your lungs. And then I would think of other weightlifting resistance exercise as healthy for the rest of the muscles around your body. And so if I was going to say, hey, I've got a lockdown diet, I'm just trying to figure out like what exercise can I do to feel better and have a higher quality of life, especially as you get older, I would say resistance training it doesn't have to be barbells. It doesn't have to be dumbbells. It can just be machines. It can also just be body weight. That can be a really good starting point because it's the resistance of your body. But figuring out ways to build muscle around your body. And I'm not saying try to be Arnold Schwarzenegger. I'm just trying to say as you get over the age of 40, there's this scientific term called sarcopenia, fancy term for basically father time takes muscle away from you. And that's why the 90-year-old grandma can't get off of the toilet because she doesn't have the strength to, right? And so one of the biggest contributors to quality of life as we get older is the loss of that muscle mass. And the two biggest ways that you can slow it down, you can't reverse it, right? You can't reverse it, but you can push it back and slow it down a ton is by resistance training. So lifting weights, doing some type of muscle building activity 3 or 4 times a week, full body, find some exercises that you like for your upper body, for your lower body, all these areas, and then also eating protein. So eating enough protein, which is a big issue, especially for males and females, but a lot of the times females really struggle to get enough protein in throughout the day. So those would be the two things I'd focus on.
So doing the squat challenge, right? Squats
Squats
are
great.
you should start with, right? Just body weight squats and maybe body weight push-ups.
Love it. I love both of those.
What if you just did squats and push-ups like 3 or 4 times a week and build up to a pretty good level of 100 each?
You're going to be better. You're going to feel 10 times better than you are today. It's going to be amazing. Yeah, I think that's an amazing starting point. And I also, what Casey said is going for a walk. You just start going for a walk, even 10, 15 minutes a day, or, a 20-minute walk 3 times a week. You're going to feel it. And a lot of the times what will happen is you'll feel it energized and you'll feel like just better in general in a day. And then you'll mentally feel better as well, especially going outside for a walk and you're getting some fresh air and, you get away from all the dong noises and the brokerage from, I'm just kidding. But you get outside in some fresh air. And a lot of the times, like I go for a walk with my wife in the evenings and it's like more of a mental health thing than a physical health. So yeah.
Yeah. No, it's walks are great. So if you do those 3 things, you're going to feel at least 10 times better than you do right now.
Yeah. 100%. Right. And I think people way too often just try to overcomplicate health. And they also try to figure out this like hack, like what's this hack? Or I open up TikTok, I scroll for 10 minutes and all of a sudden there's 5 different diets that all contradict each other. And I'm supposed to be doing all of this. And I can't eat anything that's, in the grocery store. I'm only supposed to eat, all these different things. And it's like, let's just focus on the basics. Let's start moving more. Let's start eating more fruits and vegetables. Let's start drinking less Coca-Cola and calories. Let's start eating more protein. And most people will hit their goals that they want to hit. And the insider baseball of this whole health thing is you got to figure it out what you can do for the rest of your life, because the goal of health is not to get to a certain point and then stop. You've got to the finish line. It's how do you build it around your lifestyle so you can do it for the rest of your life, and you can actually take advantage of the fruits of, your labor, or the fruits of being healthier.
Amen to that.
Good, Casey. Sorry.
You sure?
Huh?
Well, yeah, no, I mean, what I was going to say is, I'm still trying to figure out a healthy lifestyle that I think will, be one that I'm happy to live with for the rest of my life. But to your point, I think one of the biggest hurdles I had when I was trying to get from 275 down to something that's a little bit more livable, I had the tendency to go super hard for a week and then fall off the train, go back to eating a bag of candy and the soda because it was, it was too hard, right? Or I wasn't probably doing all the things that I needed to do. But you're right. How can you figure out a way to do it in such a fashion that you don't totally burn yourself out, but you start making, healthier choices. And I think to your point, you're right. People do make it pretty complicated. At the end of the day, it's, less calories in than calories out, right? So if you can fill yourself with high quality stuff like, high protein food and, do a little bit of picking things up and putting them down, that's the goal, right?
Yeah, exactly. And the sad part is with that, you go as, balls to the wall as hard as you can, you flip your whole lifestyle upside down, and then you hold on for dear life for a week or two and you fall off. Is mentally, we categorize that as a failure. And most people, when they hit their 30s, 40s, 50s, all of a sudden you're like, got to catch them all, collecting all of these failed diet attempts. And it's because you have set yourself up to fail and be unrealistic. And if you would have just started super small and asked yourself, okay, this change I'm going to make, can I see myself doing this 2-3 years from today? And if the answer is no, then you probably need to start smaller, right? And then you make that a part of your routine. Then you go and you add the next step. And it's like the habit stacking. It's super small, and just focus on, just like the rolling, snowball rolling down the hill. How can you start small and just start building these habits up, and you will see the impact. And, you all of a sudden start making some changes, and you're hanging out with your friend group who, are not making these changes. And you're like, oh, wow. Okay, come on, guys. We need to get better. Try some of these types of situations as well, because you're seeing, potentially some people who aren't making, some of these healthier decisions. So yeah, I think most people just need to start smaller and focus on consistency for a longer period of time, and looking at other metrics outside of just the weight on the scale, because that is just one metric of health.
Just one metric on health.
Boom. Yep.
Just one metric on and I had something and I totally forgot. I completely lost my train of thought. What I was going to say.
No worries.
I had a question for you, and I know what it was. It was a healthy lifestyle is good for the individual. Warm and fuzzy feelings. The cold reality of the situation, though, is that it's about business too, right?
Correct.
So those little incremental changes, right, make a huge difference on the bottom line of the business itself, which should be an importance to people who are paying out health insurance claims.
Kevin, we got to get you on the payroll. You're coming to sell it for us. I love it. Yeah, exactly.
Yeah. The less, the healthier you are, your drivers are, right, the lower your bills.
Completely agree. And lower your headaches as well, right? I mean, how many people are dealing with, headaches is not the right term, right? But you know what I'm trying to say in the fact of the scares.
You have missed work, right? You have a lot of indirect costs in there besides your health insurance bill, right? You have,
productivity, absenteeism,
productivity. That's yes.
Yeah, I completely agree. And the scary truth is you talk to someone who's worked long enough on the asset base of the trucking side of things, and most people have an experience in their life where they had to do a wellness check of a driver at Love's or TA truck stop and found them dead in their truck because of a heart attack or a stroke or some major medical issue. And I can't think of one thing worse than that from a cultural standpoint of having to tell coworkers and stuff that, X, Y, or Z passed away, or, just dealing with that as a manager, as an executive at the company. And so, at the end of the day, it's 100% needs to be a business issue, and we need to figure out an ROI, but it's also a people business. Your whole business runs on people. Your whole business runs on, having the best people behind the wheel who are going to be safe and be great brand ambassadors for your company, and not, getting into all of these sketchy situations out on the highway. And, I think the health side of things can be a huge area that can just show your people that you're thinking outside of the box, and you're thinking about them outside of where their next load's at.
Stop that revolving door a little bit.
Yeah,
you know what I mean?
Exactly.
Guarantee that employees are a lot happier the healthier that they are, and probably the more likely they are to continue to work for you, right? One thing that is interesting, it's like you guys launched in the middle of the longest freight recession of all time, I think.
Yeah.
At a time when truck drivers probably don't have as much money in their pocket as they previously had. So it's really cool to see you guys getting traction when funds are not as high as they could be. Has that been a hurdle for you guys as we start to see the market turn a little bit and truckers are making more money? Is that how does that affect you guys? It's something to think about, because health is one part of the problem for truckers. And I think in the studio earlier we talked about Evan at Truck Parking Club. Sleeping, obviously a huge part of Maslow's hierarchy. Like how do we provide the infrastructure that we need to get back to asset utilization, make the most out of these trucks and the truck drivers that are on the road?
Yeah, so I think it definitely, especially as you get to some of the smaller companies, let's say like 300, 200, employees and under. I've had some companies that have been hit, and I've also had some companies that are just ran beautifully and are doing great, and they've got some really amazing direct customers that they're the amount of freight hasn't been hit as much. You start getting up to the larger organizations, and we talk about, the 6% of their budget that's benefits. And you also talk about them being self-insured. These types of benefits are not a nice to have. Like they are needed, and there's a lot of risk and more costs that are associated if they're not getting ahead of their employees' health, and they're not offering these preventative health programs that are getting them, engaged with their day-to-day life and being healthier and happier, but then also navigating the healthcare system and, just getting the care that they deserve.
Yeah.
It is important. Very important. Mark, it was great to have you on the show today.
Thank you for having me. Yeah.
Yeah. I think I need to wrap. I don't know if you guys want to continue talking. You talk all day long.
No worries. I got to jump as well, but
I gotta go collect some money. So I gotta jump off here to do that. To learn more about Offshift, to get in contact with you, how does our audience do that?
Yeah, offshift.ai is our website, and then Offshift on any social media, and Dr. Mark Manera on LinkedIn. Would love to talk. And Casey, Kevin, thank you so much for having me on.
You bet.
Oh, yeah. Thanks for joining us. You haven't been investing in your truck driver health in the down market. Maybe now that you got some more funds, time to do so.
Definitely is. Market is on upswing. You need more drivers. You need more healthy drivers. It is definitely what you need. Casey, any parting thoughts?
Happy Thursday, everybody. Thanks for joining. For those that did, you have any questions, or you're looking for a new rate product, please do reach out to me. You can find me, Casey Larkin, on LinkedIn. Encourage you to check out the Fairlanes website. And if you're looking for any AI billing solutions out there, holler at my man, Marcus Cooksey over at Duke AI. But that's all I got. Glad to see rates are perking up a little bit here. I do love the truckers out there. So I'm excited to see that there's more earning potential, and only way out is through.
Only way out is through. That is definitely wise and sage advice from Casey Larkin. Just a happy Thursday. Let's go find some money. Let's all of us go out and find some new dollars today. So that's what I'm about to do. I got to hop off here. It's been great, and see everybody next Thursday.